Perfect. Got it. All right. Good morning, everybody. It is August 25th, 9:31, and we'll call this meeting to order. Do I have any additions to the agenda? I'm going to say we have no additions, so we'll move on. Do I have any revisions or additions to the minutes from the May, what was it, 7th, I don't remember the date, May 19th, 2021 meeting? Okay, and we have no revisions or additions. We will approve the May 19, 2021 minutes as written. So we'll start with CCS staff reports. Rachel.
Okay. One moment. Okay, so I'm going to begin with reviewing some Homosaurus statistics. So since we passed Homosaurus, we have added 189 Homosaurus authority records to the database. And Homosaurus terms have been added to 890 records as of yesterday. So you can access a list of the Homosaurus terms from the catalog wiki page. I've added a link to the draft page. This links to an Excel spreadsheet. You can also use a saved SQL query in the authority record find tool. It's labeled Homosaurus records. If you'd like to take a look at the records, you can easily find all of them with the saved SQL query. You don't have to alter it. It's set up already to find all of the Homosaurus records. If you missed the training with Jay Colbert, there is a link to the video in YouTube on this slide. You'll have access to the slides after the meeting. I did review the survey that came in from those who attended the meeting. One thing that I found interesting was that those who attended would have liked additional examples, some more hands-on examples. So if you do feel like you need assistance as you're trying to add in additional Homosaurus terms and aren't sure which to add, feel free to email the CAS listserv or the help desk to ask any of the librarians or CCS staff for opinions on what we should be adding to the record. And we will be reviewing and discussing the draft catalog wiki page to add more information to it at the next scrap meeting. We were interested in all attending the training before finalizing the page. I did receive a report recently that a record that was imported from Z3950 overlaid a record with Homosaurus terms. So I just wanted to let everyone know that it's important to take a look at the record for the Homosaurus terms if you think it's on an LGBTQ topic, so that you don't overlay those records. You can identify the Homosaurus terms by the subfield 2 that says Homo it in the subfield 2. One other recommendation I have is that you can also add the Homosaurus terms to the OCLC master records so that if it does get imported again, it will not erase the Homosaurus terms. And it would also benefit other libraries that would be interested in seeing Homosaurus in records and using that outside of the consortium. The Polaris 7.0 update is next on my list. It is really an exciting one for catalogers, but there are still some things that are missing. So most cataloging features have been added to LEAP for 7.0. There are some things missing, such as you still cannot overlay the MARC records manually. They've had some problems with that while working on it. So that's going to be in the next update, hopefully. But when you do import records using the import manager, it will automatically deduplicate the records. So that will not be a problem unless there's already 2 records, which can happen frequently, and then Polaris cannot deduplicate those records, so it creates a 3rd record instead of overlaying one of those. So that review would need to still happen in the client so that you can overlay records manually in the client. But hopefully that will be corrected soon. One other thing that still cannot be done in LEAP is that you still cannot print spine labels out. So that is something that for some reason it was saying that I was muted, but it doesn't look like I'm muted. Can everyone still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. That was very weird. Okay. Now that the training server has been updated, I will be adding new sections to the serials and LEAP course and the record sets course. But I won't be going back and retroactively recreating all the videos from the previous versions yet, because I still have to create a new cataloging course. So I will be getting the cataloging course soon and hope to finish all of the new material for the online courses by the end of September or beginning of October. We are pretty busy with various different things with Vega, so I'll just have to see how that fits into my schedule. And I will be planning 2 webinars once the courses have been completed. One is the Polaris 7.0 update overview, and the other is going to be on bulk changes in LEAP. So we did have a request for an overview of bulk changes in a webinar. So I'm going to be creating a separate webinar that provides an overview of all of the item and bibliographic bulk changes. And I think we also had an update to patron bulk change capability for 7.0. So we might be adding that into the bulk change course as well. And so we expect to be able to then update the production server with the 7.0 update by the end of October or beginning of November. So this fiscal year, I've been working with Bob to create a diversity audit data dashboard using Google Data Studio. And we have been tasked with the deadline of November for its creation date. So right now we are in the process of doing user testing of the prototype, and we are on schedule, I believe, to finish it by the end of November. So this week we are doing the user experience testing and the prototype, and after this testing, we'll be adding in some additional categories and tweaking its functionality based on the feedback. So right now, it has some general categories like geographic headings, BIPOC, disability / neurodiversity, and LGBTQIA+. So I'll also be adding in religious minorities and some more narrower categories like specific ethnicities that we'll be able to drill down to. So I think it will be really an exciting tool. And I know not all catalogers are selectors, but I think the diversity audit data dashboard is really a great way to leverage the hard work of catalogers and the great subject heading work that they put into the creation of each record. And this really is a great way to provide a free and efficient tool for conducting a diversity audit, so that the individual selectors don't have to do as much manual work, and provides a good overview of the collection and not just a small sample of a collection the way most manual diversity audits are. So once we have completed our updates, we will be doing some additional user experience testing towards the end of the fall. So you probably already noticed the statement on the new material type in the newsletter, but if you haven't, at the August 3rd meeting, database management decided that there were not enough audiobooks on cassettes to keep the cassette audiobook material type in the item record. So this material type in the item record has been labeled as other audiobook. Other audiobook can be used for any new audiobook formats and cassettes. So this can be used for a format like Yodo. And so this change has occurred on August 13th. Virginia was not able to attend the staff meeting today. So I'm not going to review all of her slides, but I have linked to her slides in the presentation, so you'll be able to access this after the meeting. The slides do provide an overview of the subject heading changes that she has been working on since the last meeting. Does anyone have any questions about what I covered today? I don't think there are any other questions.
All right, if there's no questions, then we can move on to Deborah's report.
All right. Hi, everybody. I just have two.
Sorry, there was one question from Karen. So in 7.0, we can do bulk overlay of bib records and LEAP via OCLC connection, right? Like we do in Staff Client.
When you import a record via the import profile, it will automatically deduplicate and over records. But you cannot look at the individual bibliographic record yet in LEAP in order to overlay individual records manually. Right.
Any more questions? Should wait longer, sorry.
Ready for me now?
I think so. I think we're ready.
Okay. All right, I have two quick updates for the group. First is our new website. So CCS is in the midst of a website redesign project, and we expect our new website to launch the week of October 11th. When the new website launches, everyone will log into the website, the listserv interface, and web reports using your L2 login. So this will help us move away from all of our shared logins, which will help us provide just better security overall. So this is my plug to make sure that your L2 account is up to date and that you know your L2 password. So you've got a month and a half to make sure your L2 account is squared away before we move over to using individual logins for the website, the listserv, and web reports. My next update is on Vega Discover. So as we've previously discussed, CCS is currently participating in Innovative's development partner program for Vega Discover. Vega Discover is a new catalog or discovery interface from Innovative. So as development partners, CCS is participating in monthly advisory discussions and testing with Innovative and other development partners. So during these meetings, our role is to provide feedback to Innovative to help make the product as useful as possible for us specifically and for all Polaris consortia. So over the next few months, CCS will be working with our beta libraries to test Vega Discover with patrons and to gather feedback. So this will help us determine whether or not our needs are met by the product. So in early 22, after we do our testing with users, governing board will vote on whether we want to adopt Vega Discover as a replacement for PAC. So CCS has been sharing information about the project, some documentation we've started creating, and quick guided activities in CCS News. So keep your eye on the newsletter for more updates, more documentation, and testing activities to be shared in the newsletter. We'll also be hosting a demo of Vega Discover on Thursday, September 23rd with Innovative. So Innovative will be demoing the product using our own database. So they'll be able to walk through the interface and answer any questions that we might have about the product. So I highly encourage you to register for the demo if you're interested. It'll also be recorded if you're not able to attend live. So I will pop that registration link in the chat. Any questions for me? All right, if none, I will turn it back to you, Sarah.
Okay, perfect. Then we're going to go back to Rachel for the scrap report.
Okay, so Scrap held a meeting on July 21st. This year, Scrap plans to continue to review the catalog wiki and update it. A major area that we will be reviewing this year are the pages that are categorized as national practices. So since the catalog wiki is for local practices, these pages will be reviewed to identify if any can be deleted. And if there are any local practices on those pages. Uniform titles has already been deleted because there were no local practices that were identified on the page. The pages on illegal alien subject headings and the study program note have been finalized. So I just wanted to make note that the study program note already had been added from Marchive. So the page just documents what's added in to the records from Marchive, and then provides some tips on identifying anything that needs to be corrected coming in from OCLC, but it's not a requirement. It's just a recommendation that if you're interested in correcting that note, you're welcome to do so. We have continued to discuss the Homosaurus page, and we'll be reviewing that again at the next meeting. So we are still in the process of discussing if LGBTQ headings and queer headings that have the term LGBTQ and queer should be added at the same time, because queer has become an umbrella term. We're also in the process of reviewing the graphic novels and comments, and Scrap has decided to remove the statements about country of origin. And in the next several meetings, Scrap will also be reviewing the bibliographic input standards pages. So if you have any suggestions on what you think needs to be updated, please let us know. You can email the help desk. And one thing that we did review again was the software, computer games, and video games page. We had some really great suggestions that came in on virtual reality games. These are the PlayStation virtual reality games. So Scrap has approved a new genre heading because an OLAC one did not exist yet for virtual reality video games. This can be added to any virtual reality record. We have also discussed adding a secondary statement for the 753 field, so that 2 753 fields would be in the record for virtual reality games. This would include PlayStation VR and either PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5. So this update will need CAMM approval. There has been a new proposal that will be discussed at the next meeting. Palatine proposed to allow a set of local diversity subject headings for all libraries without requiring the headings to be put in the 691 field, with the city in the subfield A preceding the heading in the subfield X. These headings could benefit any libraries interested in diversity audits, provide additional access points, or be used for making record sets on these subjects. So we began the discussion at the previous meeting, but we'll be continuing this discussion at the next meeting. So next on the agenda is the vote. Sarah?
Yeah, okay. So as Rachel said, we will need to vote on the addition of the 753 field for VR games. Did anyone need any more information about what we were talking about with that? Basically, VR games can be played on either PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5, but they require separate equipment on top of the system. So we're proposing adding an additional 753 to further distinguish them as VR games. So also, if anyone has anything to say, if they understand it and they want to discuss comments, questions, anything before we vote.
John asks, how is VR different than other system requirements? So someone who is familiar with the system requirements would be better at answering that than I would. Would someone like to unmute themselves and describe the video game system? Violet said that it requires an additional piece of hardware.
I could talk about it for a second. I'm not like an expert for sure, but my son is kind of a video game expert. And I was the video game selector at my last library. So yeah, if you have a standard PS4, PS5 game, whatever, then you just need the console. But if it's a VR game, you need the console plus the additional VR headset, which is not sold with the console. So it is different for sure. If patrons check out a VR game and take it home and they don't know that it needs that, they can't play it.
So it sounds like the main difference is that normally if you were, say, buying a PlayStation, it would already come with the controllers. So while it does sound like it's similar to a controller, it's sold separately. So it's like
Correct. It's non-standard. It's not something that comes with it. It's like, you know, if you're playing Guitar Hero, you have to buy a little guitar to do it right. If you're doing VR games, you have to have the headset.
I've never played video games, so I really don't know the answer, but is this different than, what was it, like BioShock or something, or games where you need a joystick or something? Isn't it just another add-on?
I'm not familiar with BioShock, like if it needs additional hardware, but I don't know, it's not something most gamers buy. So it is, it's different, but it's almost like a 3D movie in the sense that you can't just, well, I guess you can just watch stuff. I'm old. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying, that's all I know about it. I don't really have a horse in this race. I just know that you do need that additional piece of hardware that is not standard, isn't sold with the console.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not important to note. I'm just wondering whether 753 is the right place for it. And I don't know.
Currently, we're not collecting VR games at McHenry. So for someone that is there something different in them that would show up in an addition statement?
Kathy, I can see if I can find a record.
We collect them at Northbrook, but I don't remember there being any different edition statement. But it's been a while since I've done one. So.
It will be a while for me to open up Polaris. 1 second. Oh, Corrine might be able to answer the question. She's just coming back in. Corrine, a question came in on virtual reality while you were gone. Kathy was asking if they need, if there is an addition statement for virtual reality games.
Carlin gave an example in the chat, Astrobot. If you look at that, it does look like the edition statement says PS4, PlayStation VR.
Is PlayStation VR a platform?
I'm going to share a record on the screen. 1 second. Okay, so here's Astrobot. In the 250 field, it says PS4 PlayStation VR. There are some 500 and 538 notes that also mention PlayStation VR. And the 655 field could also include virtual reality video games, which has just been approved. And the 753 would then have 2 753 fields. If approved, this has already been added to the record for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation VR.
Rachel, can you show the pack view?
Sure. This is just the brief view. More information. So we have the addition statement. And the 753 is not visible to patrons. It would just be useful for, I think it would be useful for reports if you wanted to make a record set of records in the client or in Leap. You'd be able to use the 753 to run a report with SQL. Okay, got some comments coming in, so I'm going to go back a bit and see what questions we have. Adrian asked if the 500 note about motion sickness shows for patrons. It does not. The 500 notes are not visible in the pack. Did Scrap determine it was not enough to have the VR in the 538? I don't think Scrap talked about it. And Tammy said that if it makes it relevant for making record sets, she thinks it's worth it. Did I miss any questions? So Karen did make a comment in the chat that she's seen it various ways in the records and thought it would be helpful to have some type of standard. Sandy asked if patrons can search the 753. That's a good question. I've heard that from, I think I remember hearing that it is possible to search the 753, that it might be indexed. Deborah, do you know if you can confirm that while I'm reading the chat?
I can, but let me look it up because I don't know all the fields that are indexed by heart, but I can look it up on the wiki. So give me just a minute.
John also commented that you can make a record set from the genre heading when it's added to the records.
it looks like the 753 is not indexed, so it would not be searchable.
Erin commented that she is new to Polaris on this discussion, but she is frustrated by the fact that the 500 notes don't display. So I think that decision was made in the past because there's just so many different types of 500 notes that could be in the records that we can't just pick and choose which ones display. That some 500 notes could be just useful to librarians and not to patrons, and that it would be better to not include all of that information for every single record. We have had some suggestions to add the 500 note back to the pack recently. This isn't the first time we've heard it. At the moment, because we're really focused on testing Vega, we will not be making any changes to the pack until we have fully reviewed Vega. And we also don't do any updates to anything that's indexed unless we have new libraries during CCS. So that is also not an option right at the moment. Michelle asks if PlayStation is the only platform with VR. She says she thinks that the 753 field might be more useful for record sets than a genre heading if you want to be specific. I haven't heard of any other systems with VR yet, but I'm not an expert on video games. Brad says it's the only standalone console that has VR. And Tammy says, I liked how the addition statement, including the VR info, was showing in the initial results. So if we don't need it in the 753, then I would want it in the addition statement, since the 538 doesn't show until you open up the result in the pack. Carlin says they also circulate the Oculus, but it's not a console system. And Kathy says the addition statement makes sense given what is on the game.
Would I want to shut out my conversation if anyone has any other opinions, but sounds like maybe we're thinking an addition statement would make more sense than on 753.
Sandy asks if there is a genre heading for VR games, and Scrap has just approved one. It will be virtual reality video games.
Anyone want to make a motion for either one or the other?
I'll give it a shot. I move that we use the addition statement to and genre heading to denote VR games.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay. Do we want to do a roll call?
More discussion?
More discussion? Sure, go for it.
If we're going to put this in the addition statement, then do we need a list of things that go in addition statements in addition to platforms? Like VR does, BioShock doesn't. I have no horse in this race either. I just don't want us to create more local practices that we're not all going to follow. And there was something about a special controller that vibrated or something. I don't know. I don't know video games. Something like that. DualShock. There we go.
Can you play DualShock without having the special joystick? It's just an added enhancement to the game.
Lead DualShock is just a supported controller for PlayStation. Yeah.
A comment came in from Kathy. She said that PlayStation VR is actually on the item, so they aren't making it up as an addition statement.
The DualShock controller, though, it had a sensor that could detect how the controller was moved and that would interact with the game. I don't remember that being a specific, you had to have it to use it, but I mean, it's just a controller aspect. But the big difference between a controller that is controller costs $60, whereas a headset costs, I believe, $200+. I mean, there's a big jump between the requirements between a specific controller, which I'm pretty sure there was ability to not have it, and then a headset that's a much bigger jump.
Sarah, are you ready for me to do a roll call?
Well. Do you mean the controller or the VR for the 538? Yeah, it does. At least I think so.
Adrian asked if that would go in the field for system requirements in the 538, and then later mentioned the controller. So I think she's asking about the controller in the 538.
It currently does, yeah.
And Tammy said, so we make in a requirement in the addition statement only if the item is needed to play the game. I think this would be if it says it on the outside of the package, that it's PlayStation VR on the package.
I know that there are games that can be played on VR, but don't need to be played on VR for PlayStation. So would that be a distinction we'd want to make?
Bella says that DualShock is not always required, so sometimes it goes in the 500 field for features supported.
Do we want to amend the motion at all or move forward with the motion already put forward? Karen just put an example in the chat.
Sarah, can you repeat the motion?
Okay,
I can
I can repeat the motion. Use addition statement and genre heading to denote VR games.
I second.
Do you want me to do the roll call, Sarah?
I can do it. Okay.
Oh, that's, I mean, I've got
you
the
got
list
it.
right here. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, Algonquin. Carrie. Crystal Lake.
We have yeses coming in the chat. So yes.
Okay,
from
so Carrie is,
Carrie
yeah,
and
Carrie
Crystal
is
Lake.
yes. Crystal Lake is
yes.
yes. Displains. John?
Lynn,
Oh, yes, Lynn, sorry, okay. Ela,
Ryan says yes.
okay. Evanston,
Yes.
Fox River Valley. Yes. Fremont. Yes. Glencoe, yes. Glenview. Yes. Grays Lake.
Arlen? Are you answering or do you want me to? If it's up to me, Tammy, it's yes.
Go ahead, Tammy.
Okay,
Okay.
yes.
Yes, okay. Highland Park. Highland Park, oh, yes, okay. Huntley. Yes.
Yes.
Indian Trails. Indian Trails. Okay, Lake Forest.
Yes.
Okay, Lake Villa. Anita, yes, okay. Lincolnwood. Xiao Chen, yes. McHenry. Kathy, yes. Morton Grove. Okay, nothing. Niles. Yes. Northbrook. Oh, yes, from
That was
Barb.
yes from Barb.
Okay, Palatine. Adrian, yes. Parkridge. Lauren, yes. Prospect Heights. Oh, yes, from Indian
Okay.
Trails. Prospect Heights. Okay, Round Lake. Wilmette. Jessica, yes. Winnetka. Stephanie, yes. And Zion Benton. Zion Benton. Okay, there are all yeses, and there are 4 that aren't in attendance or didn't say anything.
Okay.
And 1
Motion-
Ferris Bueller. So the motion passes.
Great. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, and then now we'll move on to a brief discussion by me. This was brought to our attention that there have been some changes to the 082 subfield 2, which is where you record Dewey numbers. So because there will no longer be any print editions of Dewey, and it'll just be Web Dewey going forward, they made some changes so that in the subfield 2, you would record the edition, the language, and the date that the number was assigned with the year, month, day format.
And share an example.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Okay, so it is this section right here. So there will be slashes and extra information in the subfield 2 that you'll see in OCLC records.
And they haven't updated the bib formats and standards website, but it is updated on the Library of Congress MARC, which is this page. Yeah, there you go. So if you're adding them or if you're seeing them, that's what that all means. And that's it. And if anyone has any questions, comments, then we can move on to Rachel for some cataloging reminders. The edition will not necessarily always be 23 if you have an older edition. But if you're using Web Dewey, I believe it will always be 23, although I think you can access edition 22 on Web Dewey. But don't quote me on that. But the current Web Dewey edition is 23, yeah.
Okay. Something came in on the chat. Sandy says you can still access DDC 22 on Web Dewey. That was in response to Anita's question if the edition will always be 23. Okay. So there are several important quality control reminders today. Some issues have been brought to my attention that there have been a lot of mistakes found in records. So even if a record is already full level, when you import it, you should still review it for any mistakes that need to be corrected in the record. Issues have been reported of mistakes in the statement of responsibility and pagination and various different fields of the record. A report has also come in that a significant amount of invalid subject and genre headings have been found in records like Star Wars fiction and Sony video games. So please review the examples in the catalog wiki of valid and invalid subject headings and make sure you remove the invalid subject headings from the records. And as I mentioned before, also be mindful of the Homosaurus records in the database. The subject headings have the subfield 2 homoit. So there's an example on this slide. And if you do import the records from Z3950, please do not overlay the records with the Homosaurus terms already in them. We've had some issues with records being overlaid by mistake lately. And a lot of that has been due to the wrong ISBN being in the record accidentally. So it's also very important that you check the ISBNs and make sure that the correct ISBN is in the record. While this can be corrected fairly easily, the main issue is that correcting holds can be really time consuming. And sometimes depending on when we're made aware of when this accidental merge has taken place, we can't find any information in our backup system on the original records that the holds were placed on. So that places a lot of responsibility on the circulation or public services staff to actually contact people individually. And so correcting those holds can be very time consuming. So again, please review the records for any mistakes that could be in the record, especially those ISBNs, and be very careful when trying to merge records manually so that we don't have any accidental merges occurring. One other issue that I've noticed is that there are a lot of TOMs that are being used that are more general, like non-musical sound recording instead of audiobook on CD. So please review the TOM that's in the record and make sure that it is displaying properly. Well, in the pack, it really is just like an image that displays to the patrons, but if we do choose to switch to Vega, that it's actually more important in Vega because of how the records roll up into the work record. And this will create additional tabs for additional TOMs. So that actually affects how holds are placed. So it would be much easier to fulfill a hold if all audiobook on CDs were all labeled as audiobook on CD and not split up between multiple different TOMs. So Jamie did suggest that there is a SQL query for suspicious TOMs. It would be really helpful if you do run that query if you have any time, and it does require that you change your assigned branch ID to your library's assigned branch ID in that SQL query. And I am going to, at sometime in the future when I have time, to some cleanup myself of these TOMs, but the duplication has been a priority. And also creating new training material. So it might be a while before I start to work on that and spend a lot of time on correcting the TOMs myself. John has a question. Is there a replacement for Star Wars fiction? John Lavalley, do you have an answer for this? John, you're muted.
There we go. It's not a genre head. So if you have a work, just a Star Trek novel, there are other ways to bring out Star Trek, probably a series or in the title.
Are there any questions about the quality control issues on this slide?
Could I also say for movies, the Midwest tape records where the movie has just the statement of responsibility is just the director, that's basically their on order record. And so those aren't really done. They need a lot more work.
And Tammy says, please watch for those subtitles. One other point I'd like to make about Vega is that I will be creating a document that will be shared soon explaining how everything rolls up. But as Tammy said, to watch for those subtitles. One of the issues that does stop records from rolling up are mistakes in the title. So if two records have not been deduplicated and one has all of the first letters capitalized, but another record has just the first letter capitalized, like sentence case, those cannot roll up. So making sure that even if it's like a different addition that would roll up, and the title is different in the record than what's on the book, it would actually help it to roll up to make sure that the title is the same case as the other records. So it's a bit finicky in that way. And you won't necessarily always catch it unless you're like looking for it in Vega. But there's like little details like that that would help roll-ups in Vega. But that's also like something that you cannot necessarily always catch because you have to record what's on the actual book or the actual item. And we also have some comments coming in to make sure that the 490s are always traced in the 8XX field, and that the 490 only gets an indicator of 1 if there is an 8XX field. So please remember to always add the 8XX fields to the records, and feel free to email the help desk at any time to create a new authorized series if one doesn't exist yet. And Sandy also would like to add a reminder to not to forget to add the local subject heading for manga 655 second indicator of 7 with a subfield 2 of local. So that is in the catalog wiki as well. Are there any other quality control questions or issues that you'd like to bring up? Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. We had one suggestion to add to the agenda today. And so if you ever had any records that have a resource that you'd like to link out to, like a website, you can only make this visible in the pack if you add it in an 856 field with a first indicator of 4 and a second indicator of 0. Otherwise, this will not be visible to the patrons. But I'd also like to add that anything that's non-essential should be deleted, like cover images are not necessary, or links to the publisher's website. So next, I'd like to just recap some issues we've had lately that have come up via the listserv, and one is the missing volumes issue. So when you do identify item records that are missing volumes or have volumes but should not have them, please do not forget to contact the library using the tech email. That's the 3 letters for the library code, tech@ccslib.org. It's important for the libraries to be notified so that they can correct any issues they need to on their own, like print spine labels if the library needs to. It's very helpful to regularly check the missing volumes report to correct your own library's items. There are 2 saved SQL queries in the item record find tool. One is called has no volume, but others do. And the other is has volume, but others don't. The only thing that you need to change is the 2 lines with the assigned branch ID. and you would just need to change the number in the parentheses. And the next issue I'd like to review is the process for deleting withdrawn items. A report was run recently and covered many withdrawn records that had not been deleted. Many of them were changed to withdrawn more than a year ago. So please remind your staff that all withdrawn records need to be deleted before they can be purged from the system. Records can be bulk deleted from a record set by selecting all records in the record set and then right-clicking and pressing delete. You can regularly check for withdrawn records that have not been deleted by using the SQL query in the item record find tool called withdrawn but not deleted. And again, you only need to change the number for the assigned branch ID in the parentheses. And Algonquin has also volunteered to share their workflow that they use for withdrawing and deleting records. And I've linked to a document on this slide that you'll be able to access after the meeting. Are there any questions?
Seeing any questions? So we can move on to the open forum. Anyone wants to talk about anything? Here's the time to bring it up. Hi, John.
Hello.
Yes.
I have two quick authority file things. I sent out an email to Katz last week about Sarah Ferguson. I changed the heading. She seems to be using her last name again. The higher ups hate it when you change authority records. I don't know why, but they do. And so I freaked out a little bit that they might change it back. It's been a week. It seems like it's okay. Any record can change, so without us knowing. So I would say it's safe that if you want to change your cutters, it's probably safe to do so. And the other thing is that the heading Nickelodeon Firm is a book publisher. The heading we actually want is Nickelodeon Television Network. There are 4,000 mistakes in OCLC, so beware. I bulk changed a bunch of ours. So just know by the way.
Kathy asked, are any libraries using two-factor authentication for staff to log into workstations, email, etc.? And if yes, what are you using? And how do your staff like it? Guess I'm going to go with no one is or they don't know. Kathy.
Corinne
Yeah, go ahead.
Corinne says that they just have one username password for people to get onto workstations. And of course, that's different than the email password. Carlin at Palatine says they use two-factor for G workspaces, but our other stuff is single. What are G workspaces, Carlin?
Google.
G Suite. And Kathy says we're starting to look at it. If you are using two-factor authentication, please email her. And that's Kathy at McHenry. Her email is in the chat.
Anything else, or anyone have any announcements? You can do that now as well.
This is Lincolnwood. We have a new department head, Stephanie Hogan. She started at August 9th. I'll type the name in the chat so Becky can record.
And at Parkridge, Kelly Green is now a full-time cataloger, and I am the manager. I am.
Yeah. Clap for you.
Corinne added in the chat that she did a Rails facts survey about video game providers that you are happy with. So please fill it out if you're able to.
Okay. If we have nothing else, congrats in the chat for Lauren and Kelly. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Corinne seconds it.
All right, then we are adjourned.
Kathy asked what library Carlin is at. That's at Palatine. Oh, Grays Lake. Sorry, I'm mixing a different Carlin. Okay.
All right. Adjourned. Thanks, everyone.